Even with the last 9 commander-in-chiefs, our country still experiences poverty today. Poverty is the condition of being extremely poor, which makes people unable to get basic necessities of life. It affects people's physical, mental, social, and moral abilities. Activist and writer Michael Harrington argued that American poverty constituted a separate culture, another nation, with its own way of life. The novel The Other America describes poverty in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and how it affected a number of diverse groups of people. Today, and 50 plus years later, it still exists. Harrington speaks about an invisible land of the poor. That the poor are invisible is one of the most important things about them. Harrington wrote in his production in 1962, he goes on to say that the poor are not only neglected and forgotten, what is worse, they are not seen. Harrington revealed 1 in 4 Americans at the time fell below the poverty line. Harrington brought to light and inspired a movement on the war against poverty that led past presidents JFK and Lyndon B. Johnson to create social reform programs in hopes that they would decrease poverty in America. Programs such as the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, Food Stamp Act of 1964, as well as the Social Security Act, which helped create Medicare and Medicaid programs. In 1980, Michael Harrington considered a run for presidency, but supported the other Democratic candidates instead. The Other America was a highly influential book that argued that despite America's post-war prosperity, there were tens of millions of Americans stuck in desperate poverty. Harrington felt poor people should not be blamed for their poverty. In some cases, they had been born into disadvantaged situations that would not allow them much of an opportunity to succeed. Being poor is not simply a condition marked by the absence of wealth. Rather, poverty created a subculture of its own. He didn't believe that poverty was passed down from generation to generation. He felt it was because of the lack of their resources. Winning the war on poverty and trying to rectify the extreme levels of inequality go hand in hand with our economic growth. Inequality challenges our ethics as human beings. Inequality is not just about gaps in our income. Just as Harrington said, we Americans should be unwilling to live in a society that, having the resources to provide everyone a decent standard of living, and not be divided into 2 nations. He also felt the fate of the poor was up to the decision of the better off. This could be true in today's world as well. As of today, the official poverty rate is 12.7% based on the U.S. Census Bureau's 2018. An estimated 43.1 million Americans lived in poverty. Government should invest or budget more funding for more programs and projects that could be beneficial to improve the lives of the poor and to lift them out of poverty. In certain states, the numbers of unemployment and low-income families struggling is still relevant. What we see in America today is very similar to the situation with poverty in the 1960s. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people in this world with a ton of money. However, there are still plenty of people with absolutely nothing. Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, and the other social reform programs still exist in today's world. We all, as a society, could do more to help with ending poverty. We can all agree that the federal government has succeeded in the last 50 years and come a long way to improve living conditions for low-income Americans with their reform of social welfare programs that were created. Sadly, we are more than 5 decades later, and poverty still exists.